Our next speaker is Arnie Richards. The title of his presentation is The Separation Party, Which Way Did They Go? He began hiking in the Grand Canyon in 1967, and as of this date, he's made 51 backpacking trips into the canyon, with his first foray into Separation Canyon coming in the spring of 1983. Upon climbing out at Separation Canyon, he noticed that there were a number of potential routes to the rim, and this raised the question, which route did Dunn and the Howlands below take on their ill-fated escape from the canyon in 1869? He spent the next 30 years exploring the region and attempting to answer that question. Arnie spent his entire working career at Mattel Toys in a variety of roles, including engineering research, quality assurance, and manufacturing engineering. He retired in 2009 and lives with his wife, Lily, of 33 years in Downey, California.
Okay, here we go. That, my friends, is the shin bone of William Dunn. I know it is, it has to be. I found it right on that rock in the exact location where 19th century ranchers on the Shivwits Plateau claim that the three guys from the Powell party were murdered by the Shivwits Indians. Now, a wildlife biologist has tried very hard to convince me that's actually the leg bone of a mule deer. I don't believe that for a second. Okay, you all know the story. In May of 1869, John Wesley Powell and 9 other guys start their float down the Green River. A couple of weeks later, they lose one of their boats in a rapid, along with a third of their food and a bunch of other stuff. They continued to lose food through wettings and spoilage and consumption, and by the time they entered the Grand Canyon in early August, they were running seriously short, and in fact, they went on half rations right after that. And it wasn't even good food either. These guys were living on rancid bacon and musty flour, dried apples, and coffee. And half rations, while your job is to line and portage 1,000-pound oak boats over the rocks, doesn't sound like a lot of fun. On August 27th, they reached the head of what appeared to them to be the toughest rapid they had yet encountered. And at that point, 3 of the guys said, "We're done, we're not gonna do that, it's suicide to continue. We're gonna climb out of the canyon and try to reach the settlements to the north." So Oramel Howland, Seneca Howland, and William Dunn, Oramel age 36, his younger half-brother Seneca, age 26, and William Dunn, age 24, decided to leave the canyon. Now this is the only known photograph of William Dunn. And 2 things I notice about it is he bears an uncanny resemblance to Dave Mortensen. And how could a guy who's only 24 years of age look that old? Anyway, what do we know? We know that the 3 men left the river at mid-morning on August 28th and started up the canyon. Now, why mid-morning? Why didn't they start at daybreak? Well, they helped the other 6 guys line the 2 remaining boats over the first part of the rapid before continuing. And I'm sure you've heard the story where the guys successfully negotiated the rapid, fired their guns to let them know they were okay, hoping they would follow, but the 3 men said, no, we're gonna continue up the river. What we've heard, but what has never ever been absolutely confirmed, is that they were either murdered near the Parashant Ranch on August 31st, or they were murdered somewhere east of Wolf Hole Valley, about 25 miles south of Washington, Utah. We just don't know which one they did. The question then becomes, what route would they have to take in order to get to either of those 2 locations in that amount of time allotted? So here's a map. The lower star is where Separation Canyon is. The middle star is about where the Parashant Ranch was located, and the upper star is this second location. Now, between the upper and lower star, it's very rolling grasslands, very easily traversed. I'm not even going to worry about that. Let's get from Separation Canyon to Parashant Ranch and see if we can do that. Okay, it's 28 air miles between those 2 spots, but the route the guys had to take was about 45 miles. So they got roughly 4 days to go 45 miles through some pretty rough and uncharted territory. What did they have going for them? They were young, they were in excellent condition, a lot of outdoor experience, and we'll get to this last one later. There's water in the potholes. But they were hungry, possibly even malnourished by now. I'm guessing their boots were in pretty bad shape after 3 months of lining boats through the rapids, and they didn't know where they were going. So let's start them up the canyon. Now, if this photo looks familiar, that means you've been to the IMAX Theater over in Tucson. They have a very nice show, and they dramatize the Powell expedition, and they show these three guys walking up a very scenic Paiute sandstone gorge. But actually, this is what the mouth of separation looks like. It's down in the lower bowels of the lower granite gorge, hundreds of feet of black granite cliffs surrounding you. But it's a pretty nice canyon to walk up. It's an easy, gravelly bottom thing. It climbs at only 220 feet per mile, and so it's pretty easy to walk up in that area. So let's start up the canyon. They start walking up, and after about 3 miles, call it an hour, they reach a junction. One of them goes north. This one's called the West Fork of Separation Canyon, and one of them goes northeast. It's the main fork. I don't think they tried to go up the West Fork, because if they had, they would have run into a 350-foot cliff a short distance up. This photograph is courtesy of Rich Rudeau, who rappelled down that cliff 350 feet with a 200-foot rope. And no, this is a true story. No, looking up the main gorge, you can see quite a ways. It's wide open. It's kind of inviting looking, and I'm quite sure they went that way. So let's continue walking up the canyon. Another 2.5, 3 miles later, they reach another junction. One goes south, the other goes north. They're trying to reach Mormon settlements to the north, so I'm pretty convinced they would have tried this first. So let's go up this way first. Take about a half hour to get to that spot. You look up and you see a 200-foot cliff in the red wall. I guess we're not going to go that way. Let's try this other route. You can get up in here, and you climb over some Temple Butte limestone, and you get into a very pretty little gorge. Running stream, lots of redbud trees, but eventually it necks down, and there's a chalk stone that it's very hard to get over, and beyond that, there's several more rappels, according to Rich Rudeau. So they couldn't go that way. That leaves us with this last choice of going south, which is counterintuitive, but it turns out to be an absolute cakewalk. It's flat, it's smooth, there's no trouble at all. 290 feet per mile through the red wall. So after about another 4 miles, you reach the top of the red wall. Okay, now there's 2 more choices. You can either go to the east or you can go to the north. They were trying to go to the north to reach the settlements. I don't think they went this way, though. First of all, going east looks pretty easy. That's from the top of the red wall looking up at the Supai. But going north also looks pretty easy. If they had gone to the north, they would have climbed up to this point here. That's called the Sanat Plateau. That's the equivalent to the Esplanade level in the canyon. And they would have looked up and they would have seen this ravine and say, that might get us to the top. And if they had started up, they would have come to this 15-foot band of Coconino sandstone that you can't get through without climbing equipment. So they would have had to turn around and go back. This would have cost them at least a half a day, maybe more. They might not have gotten to the Parashant Ranch in time to get murdered. Okay, so I think they went up this other route. Now, in 78, a historian named Michael Belshaw did exactly what we're doing today. He tried to figure out what route the guys took. He got us to this point, the same as I did, but after that, he gets very nonspecific about what route they took. Fortunately, in his article, he did put a couple of photographs. So if you climb up this canyon, just as you reach the top of the Supai, you have to climb up this talus to the left. There's my photograph of the same talus, and then there's a little slot in the little groove that you have to climb through about 20 feet, and there's my picture of the same spot. So Belshaw and I agree they went up this canyon, which, because I have no imagination at all, I call Gateway Canyon. Okay, so from the top of the Supai at Gateway Canyon, there are 5 different visible routes to the rim. Okay, there's looking to the south. There's a couple of routes you can see up there, the gaps in the cliff. To the east, there's another one. Around the bend, there's one up there. Dave and I have been down this one the very first time we did it. And I think they took Route 5. Now, the reason I think of that is that it's more direct, and when you walk a mere quarter mile up Gateway Canyon above the Supai, you see this notch in the rim, and the closer you get, the better it looks. And it really is, the Coconino is totally broken down in there. There's a 40-foot scramble through some steep spots, but it's basically a very easy way to get up to the rim. So by the evening of August 28th, they would have been, or either that or the morning, early morning of August 29th, they would have been standing on the rim. But what if they'd tried to take one of these southern routes? If they would have climbed around this way, maybe gone throughout, that would have cost them at least a day. For one thing, the forest up on top is incredibly thick. You can't walk in a straight line up there. There's brambles and branches and cactus and all kinds of stuff. And the fastest I have ever been able to walk through this part of the rim is about 1 mile per hour. So that would have taken a day to get to that spot. So I think, no, they went up Gateway, and they're now standing on the rim on the morning of August 29th. Now this forest here for the next several miles continues to be really thick. It's 1 mile an hour territory. So they're going to start working their way up. And at this point, they might have climbed a thing called Blue Mountain up there to the left, where the question mark is. Blue Mountain is a low hill. You can't even tell there's a hill there when you're standing next to it because you can only see about 100 feet through this forest. Belshaw thinks they did climb it. I'm not so sure. If they had, they would have been able to see Price Point to the northeast and Dellenbaugh to the northwest. In any event, they have to continue heading north at 1 mile an hour through this forest. Somewhere around here, they would have taken a look over to the right and seen Price Point. And my theory is that they would have thought, let's go climb Price Point and see what's to the north. We need to get to some high points to understand what's ahead. So to do that, they would have had to cross the head of Price Canyon. And right at the head, they most certainly would have found Price Water Pocket, a deep pond in the middle of the basalt, and full of water most of the time. So let's talk about that water question again for a second. There had been heavy monsoons in recent weeks. According to Powell's log, he wrote, it rained on the 7th of August, the 9th of August, the 14th through the 19th of August, sometimes so heavy they couldn't even keep a fire going. And he wrote, true, the late rains have been favorable to us should we go out, for the probabilities are that we shall find water still in holes. And at one point, I almost conclude to leave the river. So he was thinking about it too. If they had, they were going up, they would have the guys would have found water at Price Water Pocket, and then further north, Ambush Water Pocket, Green Spring, and Lake Flat. Water was not going to be an issue for them on this escape. So I think they went over to Price Point, got their bearings, saw Mount Dellenbaugh up to the northeast, said, okay, that's going to be our next point to go to. And then I think they probably walked back and camped near Price Water Pocket in case game came by, they could shoot it and get some food. Anyway, next morning, now it's August 30th, they're going to head north, and now the forest thins out, and you can make pretty good time through this forest area if you're walking. So they go past Ambush Water Pocket, Green Spring, and head for Mount Dellenbaugh. Now there is an inscription up on Mount Dellenbaugh that says W. Dunn, 1869. Nobody knows if it's authentic or not. I kind of suspect not, because why would a guy who's starving to death and just trying to get out of there spend the time to carve his name on a rock? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Anyway, next to that carving, which is shown with the upper arrow there, those letters are only about 4 inches long. It's a pretty small inscription. Someone carved the name Water with an arrow, totally different kind of script, but it's pointing to a thing called Lake Flat. Lake Flat is a lowland up on the rim about 3 miles from Dellenbaugh, fills up with water during the monsoon season, and possibly that's where the guys walked to and maybe met up with the Shivwits Indians there. We just don't know. But I'm thinking they may have camped there on the night of the 30th. So now it's pretty clear they're going to be able to reach the Parashant Ranch by the 31st in order to get killed. Okay, so we go here. Maybe they met the Shivwits in this part of the area. We're not sure. But from there, it's about, I don't know, it's a short distance up to Parashant Ranch, and they get to this spot here. Now, in 1949, a historian / explorer that you may have heard of named Harry Ailson, he interviewed a guy named Ben Swap. Ben was the son of John Swap, who was born in 1854 and is one of those 19th century ranchers I was talking about. In 1910, John took his son Ben to the, quote, murder site near the Parashant Ranch, and Ben drew this map for Ailson. So you can see down at the bottom there is a place called Log Spring. There's a circle around some Parashant Ranch buildings, and then a ravine coming in from the east where he says the murder took place. Here's the U.S. Geological Survey map of the same area. You can see Log Spring at the bottom, possible murder site there in the middle, and then what's left of the Parashant Ranch, a big water tank up to the upper right. So maybe this is where they went. We don't know. There's Log Spring, pretty nice looking spot. This is the ravine coming in from the east. Upper right is a perfect place to stage an ambush if you wanted to surprise somebody. And we just don't know. This may have been where it happened, maybe where it didn't happen. All we're left is more questions and William Dunn's shin bone. Thank you.